Many parts of Kolkata are completely dark. Wind speeds of up to 133 kilometers being reported. Several trees have been uprooted. Cyclone Amphan, and the worst, we are told, will be in the tail of the cyclone. Apparently, it's left a trail of destruction in its wake. It's still lashing parts of Bengal. Odisha, to a large extent, has emerged from the cyclone. That's the latest that we are hearing. We will have Director General of the National Disaster Response Force, NDRF, SN Pradhan, joining me on the broadcast live to give us the latest position on the cyclone. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Action-packed 30 minutes lined up. Let's get started with the headlines. Pulwama, as far as West Bengal and Odisha are concerned, they're combating both coronavirus and a super cyclone. I'll get you more on that, but let's take a look at the bigger picture in our country. More than 1 lakh cases of coronavirus. Let me now get you the exact numbers. 1,06,750 confirmed COVID-19 cases in India. 3,303 people have so far lost their lives in the battle against coronavirus. But 42,298 people have also recovered. This is the latest data that we're getting from the Ministry of Health as on 2100 hours. That's 9 p.m. this evening. But our top focus story remains the cyclone, the super cyclone, and the destruction in Bengal. In Kolkata, in Hooghly, in that area in Bengal, several trees have been uprooted. There is no electricity in many parts of Kolkata, but across Bengal, in many pockets, there is a trail of destruction that's been reported after the super cyclone made landfall. There is no electricity in some parts. Of course, the municipal corporation now is coming out. The uprooted trees, the uprooted lampposts, they are being removed. Short circuits have been reported in some areas. There are some figures when it comes to deaths. As of now, the confirmed information is 4 fatalities. But we're still waiting for an official confirmation from the Bengal administration on the latest. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's Indrajit Kundu joining us live from Kolkata. Indrajit, describe the latest on ground zero.
Cyclone Amphan has left a trail of destruction in the city of Joy in Kolkata. There are various areas which are completely pitch dark right now, and there is power outage. In some places, the Calcutta Electric Supply Corporation has, as a precaution, snapped power supplies. In other places, the power supply has got disrupted due to the cyclone. 113 to 130 kilometers per hour. You know, this is the kind of wind speed that Kolkatans witnessed today, something which is unprecedented. You can see the wires out here, all these cables and wires completely entangled, and it will take some time for the Kolkata Municipal Corporation to come and sort this out, clear these roads. So gusty winds has led to this situation. As we can see here, Kolkata Municipal Corporation vehicle is on its way. There are many such vehicles within KMC which are on its way right now in order to clear the debris which is out on the streets of Kolkata. Complete trail of destruction for over 4 hours. We could experience massive, gusty winds that has ravaged this entire city.
India Today reporters are on ground zero. Manogya Loiwal is at Digha. Indrajit Kundu is in Kolkata. We're talking about heavy winds. We're talking about massive rain. The real extent of the damage will only be known at sunrise tomorrow. But is the worst yet to come? Because many say that after the main body of the cyclone has passed, after the eye of the cyclone has passed, it's the tail which carries a whiplash, and the sting often is in the tail. So that is why NDRF says for a ground reality, we need to wait for a couple of more hours.
Cyclone Amphan tore into India, making landfall with all its might. Kolkata, not far from the landfall site, witnessed the fury. Uprooted trees, mangled lampposts, trail of destruction. Heavy rains and gushing wind lashed the city.
You can see trees have already been uprooted. They have fallen here And this is the kind of worry that the administration had, that there would be large scale damage to property, telephone towers that are across the city, and the apprehension is that such telephone towers, trees may fall and may cause damage.
The extremely severe cyclonic storm started landfall between Digha in West Bengal and Bangladesh's Hatia Island around 2:30 p.m. The administration evacuated 5 lakh people living close to the coast as gigantic tidal wave came crashing in.
I'm here in Digha, a place where landfall took place around the area, including parts of South 24 Parganas, and the devastation is something what you see here. With trees being uprooted, many trees being uprooted on several roads, blocking the entire movement of vehicles, and also destruction that has been caused in various parts of the district. Movement on the entire flyover has been blocked and stopped completely till further notice.
The storm also ravaged ecologically fragile Sundarbans region with wind exceeding 180 kilometers per hour. The storm also wreaked havoc in north coastal districts of Odisha, leaving behind a trail of destruction, flattening makeshift houses, uprooting power and communication lines. Balasore and Bhadrak districts were the worst affected. Nearly 1.6 lakh people were shifted from the low-lying area. Authorities have now started rescue and relief operations at war footing.
20 की 20 टीम डिप्लॉयड है और ग्राउंड पर डिप्लॉयड है. रिजर्व में कुछ नहीं रखा गया क्योंकि अब काम का समय आ गया और इवैक्यूएशन का समय हो चला था, इसलिए उसमें लगाया गया था.
Already reeling under the coronavirus pandemic, Umpan has been a double whammy for Bengal and Odisha, with Indrajit in Kolkata, Manogia in Digha, and Sufyan in Balasore. Bureau Report, India Today.
And I quickly want to cut across to ground zero, Digha, where India Today's Manogia Loiwal now joins me for more on the story. Manogia, was the administration able to evacuate a large number of people? Is the destruction as bad as was feared?
It has been more than 24 hours that it is raining incessantly across the state of West Bengal and parts of Odisha also. There is waterlogging in various areas, especially Kolkata, Digha, South 24 Parganas, that have been massively affected. As the winds have been gushing at a speed of more than 150 km per hour, uprooting trees in various places, blocking roads, waterlogging in main and arterial roads of Kolkata as well as districts also. Entire traffic has been disrupted as people have been asked to stay indoors till tomorrow. The threat of the cyclone is here to stay as it made landfall around late in the evening, and since then the winds have been gushing at a faster speed with damages that have been beyond imagination, especially in rural Bengal. Parts of Kagdweep and other areas in Haldia even, which are extremely populated, are the ones which have been highly affected. Even the coastal belt of Odisha has seen massive effect. What you would see in the next 24 hours would be the impact also, as teams of NDRF have been operating on various roads to ensure that the uprooted trees are removed with immediate effect, at least to ensure a road movement that could be possible till late night in various parts of state.
So the NDRF teams are deployed, and let me quickly cut across to the National Disaster Response Force headquarters. In the control room is SN Pradhan, the Director General of NDRF. He joins us on the show. Mr. Pradhan, as you monitor the situation on ground zero, what's the latest both in Bengal and in Odisha, sir?
Well, Gaurav, how it pans out now is that probably the worst is over as far as Odisha is concerned. The Odisha districts were mostly the northeastern districts of Balasore and Bhadrak, and there the wind speeds had gone up to maybe 90 or 85, and that is as per prediction of the IMD within 100, and so that was not such a destructive potential, and I think the worst has passed by, and Odisha should now be able to relax. And I think now it will be all up to the rehab and the reconstruction exercise, which starts maybe late tonight or morning tomorrow. Even their grids are fine, is what the reports from ground have told me. So the electricity should be up and running, the telecom should be up and running within the next 24 to 48 hours. The problem, I think, is the situation that is developing, which is again ongoing situation in Bengal, where the affected districts and the areas between Digha and the Sagar Island, etc. The districts of South Chobis Pargana, North Chobis Pargana, Havra, Hooghly, East and West Midnapur, there has been a trail of destruction, it looks like. What is exactly is the volume of destruction? I wouldn't put a figure to it, or I wouldn't put an idea to it, but I think there is a trail of destruction that we may have to look into come morning.
Okay, but right now it's said that the sting is often in the tail of a cyclone, the whiplash effect. Are we still to fear that, or are we through that, sir?
Yes, I would imagine we can put it like that, because the eye of the storm is right over the Sundarban area, Sundarban Delta area, and moving towards the Bangladesh border, and that will complete the system of movement probably well past midnight. But there is a tail which is coming up, and there's this tendency in people to relax because the eye of the storm is quite calm. So that would be a mistake, and I think we should be prepared for the tail also, and that could be destructive.
Okay, so you're watching the situation on from your control room. Movement of we are told between 4 to 5 lakh people in Bengal, 1.5 to 2 lakh in Odisha, especially in COVID times. Were we able to maintain social distancing, or is there a fear that there could be a double whammy, the cyclone and coronavirus?
Well, Gaurav, that's a very pertinent question in this context that we are dealing with now. But we must say that this is a dual challenge that we are facing. We had not anticipated this in these terms, because we were preparing, as far as NDRF is concerned, we were preparing for floods and monsoon in the time of COVID, and it is not the cyclone that we were preparing for, although it would stand us in good stead ultimately. But then it is a double jeopardy kind of a situation where we are dealing with COVID-19, which is a super pandemic or a super epidemic or pandemic, and there's a super cyclone. So there are two things superimposed over each other, a lot of supers there, and that's why it is very important that we must also take it in our stride to deal with each challenge discretely and combinedly. And that is why, while in evacuation, we are also telling them not only about the hygienic conditions and the sanitization that has to be done and the protocols that have to be followed of social distancing. We are also telling them how to protect themselves from the cyclones. So all this is being combined while we are doing our work on ground.
You know, since you mentioned hygiene and sanitization and COVID-19, is there a fear that there could be waterborne diseases and infection, and that could be the next attack? You mentioned double jeopardy. Is that the double whammy that you apprehend, sir?
I would say that cannot be ruled out, because a cyclone is also an aquatic disaster, the category with which we, with the rubric under which we put the cyclone. Like floods, it's an aquatic disaster because precipitation is involved. And when precipitation is involved, what comes behind precipitation and moisture is disease and infection. So yes, infection cannot be ruled out. And again, that can be a multiple, add to the multiple challenge of a cyclone in the time of COVID, when infection also follows.
And if lakhs of people have been moved out of their homes, practically in a rush, even as the cyclone suddenly came in, how soon can they move back to their homes, and where they are they able to maintain social distancing?
I think Odisha would be a better candidate for that process to start probably early, even as early as tomorrow, maybe tomorrow afternoon or so. Of course, depends on the local authorities there. But Bengal, by the nature of it and by the inputs that we are getting, could be a little different, and we may have to look at a long-term kind of a rehabilitation process. But I would not venture to guess exactly what is the timeline of that process. We would know only tomorrow morning.
Right. Mr. Pradhan, you're in the control room, you're at work. Let me not keep you away from work for longer for the moment. Many thanks for joining us here on India First. S.N. Pradhan, Director General of the NDRF. I now want to shift focus to the other big story that we're tracking here on India First, and that is Nepal's unilateral cartographic aggression, some would say, or assertion, others would say. Lippu Lake is in India. Nepal's new map shows it as a part of Nepal. Nepal's Prime Minister has also made some rather uncharitable comments about India. Many are arguing, is this because there is an intense fight within Nepal's Communist Party, or is this China's direct interference in our neighborhood?
November 2014. The streets of Kathmandu were resonating with chants of Modi Modi. Cut to May 2020. And Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli made two statements that have led to much disappointment in Delhi. Oli targeted India for the rise in COVID-19 cases in Nepal.
वुहानबाट संक्रमित भएर आएको अलिक नरम देखिएको थियो, इटालीबाट आएको पनि अलिक नरमै देखिया थियो, दुबईबाट आएको पनि अलिक नरमै देखिया थियो, तर भारतबाट आएको चाहिँ अलिक कडा भाइरस देखिएको छ.
Less than a fortnight after Defence Minister Rajnath Singh inaugurated a motorable track to Lippu Lake to facilitate the movement of pilgrims for the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, Nepal released a map claiming Lippu Lake to be a part of their territory. Nepal had contested a November 2019 map released by India showing Kalapani, Limpiadhuri and Lippu Lake to be a part of Indian territory. After Defence Minister Rajnath Singh inaugurated Lippu Lake Road, India, in the face of Nepalese protests, had clarified that the road was built inside Indian territory.
We should not delay for a constructive diplomatic dialogue. There is no alternative to peaceful diplomacy based on dialogue between us. Given our historical, religious, cultural and unique people-to-people relationship, we can't think of anything to untoward our relationship just because of these incidents.
Key Nepal watchers suspect ultra-nationalist politics is playing out in Nepal, and there are indications that China may be pushing Nepal to adopt this anti-India stance. In fact, General M.M. Narwane, Chief of Indian Army Staff, did indicate that Nepal was protesting at someone else's behest.
There is reason to believe that they might have raised these problems, these issues, at the behest of someone else.
There is a major rift within the ruling Nepal Communist Party between Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and former Prime Ministers Pushpa Dahal Prachand and Madhav Nepal. In fact, the grapevine in Kathmandu has it that the Chinese ambassador to Nepal sorted out the rift between the three. And this for India should be a matter of grave concern. The rising Chinese influence in Nepal. With Geeta Mohan and cameraman Kripal Singh in Delhi, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. And Government of India has reacted to Nepal's cartographic assertion showing Lippu Lake as a part of Nepal. The government has said that it urges Nepal to refrain from such unjustified cartographic assertion and respect India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan, who joins us live for more on the story. Geeta, explain what's happening in India's neighborhood. Nepal is India's civilizational, we have civilizational ties, blood brothers, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi once said, that India hasn't won a single war since 1947, when Nepal hasn't shed blood. Why such acrimony now?
Well, Gaurav, it did come as a shock to New Delhi, the manner in which, in the haste with which Kathmandu has reacted to the cartographic revision that it has taken up and published new maps just a day after the Prime Minister of Nepal announced that there will be a cartographic revision or an updating of the map of Nepal. The statements that have come not just from the Prime Minister but from the leadership, including the Minister of Land Management, Aryal, who actually launched the map, clearly shows that this is a political decision. The domestic politics of Nepal have taken over foreign policy matters, and very sensitive foreign policy matters, Gaurav, that could have long-lasting ramifications to what India-Nepal ties could look like in the near future, or for that matter in the future.
Okay. Is China pumping in a lot of money? Is this because there's an internal rift within Nepal's Communist Party that we see such shrill rhetoric from KP Sharma Oli, and is that the reason why there's increased acrimony? Well,
to a certain extent, yes. The experts on the Indian side are not the only ones who are looking to Oli and looking at Oli and his interactions and engagement with the Chinese side. But look, Gaurav, China is not just engaging Oli. Chinese ambassadors' overreach in the kind of engagement that she's had in Kathmandu are quite something. She's engaged not just with the ruling dispensation but with the opposition leaders as well. So many are calling it an overreach, a diplomatic overreach by the Chinese envoy. Having said that, there is a history to the updating of a map by Nepal. In 2019 of November, India updated its map. Since then, Nepal has been seeking foreign secretary level talks. We'll have to wait and see how now the two countries are going to come to the talking table to resolve the unresolved issues between the two countries.
There are strong civilizational bonds between India and Nepal, but is the lure of the lucre more important, is the answer that many would have to look at. Geeta Mohan, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. But I want to leave our viewers with a happy story, and that is resumption of flights. It will happen. It will happen gradually. The dates have been announced. How that will happen will be announced by airlines themselves. So, lockdown restrictions are being lifted. Domestic operations are set to resume from Monday. The Civil Aviation Ministry has told both airports and airlines to be ready to start flight operations from the 25th of May. The flight operations, however, will begin gradually. Booking for domestic flights will begin tomorrow. Indian airspace, remember, has been shut for close to 60 days. Specific guidelines for passengers to follow very systematically. Social distancing, wearing a mask, leaving places, not just in the aircraft seats, but also in the bus and boarding. All those rules will come in. Let's listen in to Minister Hardeep Puri.
Well, I'm very happy that we finally have announced the decision that flights will commence from Monday the 25th of May in a calibrated manner, and that these flights will go to all parts of the country. Initially, only a small percentage of the total number of flights, but depends on the kind of experience we gain. We will increase the number of flights, and I want to express my satisfaction at the cooperation that we've been getting from all the stakeholders, from the airlines, from the airports. It's not been a secret. I have said actually that airlines and airports have been ready for the last 1 week. We were just waiting for the green signal, and I think I had also hinted that sequentially it would be necessary for us to first commence rail operation. And
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.